flag in around 1980, and I was told there are only 6 of them made, and one of them was given to the Pope and one of them to the Dalai Lama. That I was given one for some reason, and there were 3 other people, and I don't know who they are. But this is a very, very interesting flag, and this for me was a transformative moment, a pivotal moment also. There's one dot in the middle here, right here. This represents all of the firepower that was used in World War II. All the bombs dropped all over the world that destroyed so much, and including the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And this flag has 6,000 equal dots on this flag. Okay, there's 6,000 of the dots. And these dots represented all of the firepower that was on Earth at the time I was given this flag. 6,000 World War IIs. And I was in a state of shock. For 2-3 days, I've been doing anti-nuclear organizing, but I had no idea there was this much firepower on Earth. And I just stared at this thing. I mean, I just kept looking at it and going, my God, how are we going to ever survive? There's going to be an accident. We could, you know, destroy ourselves. I mean, it just seemed impossible. And so, you know, when something looks impossible, what I found is that if you sort of let go of the way you're thinking about it and kind of open your mind, maybe you'll get another clue of some other direction. It's kind of like you're walking toward a wall and there's a door and the door is locked and you think you can't go any further. Then if you go to the left or to the right, often there's another door that's open. And then that takes you in a new path, a new way, and that somehow has much more purpose and meaning, much more clarity. So I had the thought, after about 2 days of staring at this flag and all the dots, I had the thought, the only way we can survive is for humanity to come together in a whole new way, something we've never done before, and to be so connected with the infinite creator, that we each of us wake up to our parts in playing, living life in a whole new way, and that this transformation will be so huge, it'll be every bit as great as a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. I mean, there's a cartoon that I saw not long after I had that thought, which was is a butterfly flying along and 2 caterpillars crawling along the ground, and one caterpillar says to the other caterpillar, "You'd never get me up in one of those contraptions." And I thought that was kind of a cute, you know, when you're in caterpillar mode, butterfly looks so impossible. But once you start flying and start, you know, doing all the things butterflies do, then it becomes the sort of the normal way of life. So what happened then was I was in New York City giving a talk to about 2,000 people one day, and this was in 1982, I believe. And I showed the flag, and I used this thing like, well, humanity needs to transform every bit as much as a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And then all of a sudden, I had a very curious thought. Hey, I wonder how the caterpillar butterfly does it. I bet we could learn from that, because there's so many instances where human beings learn from nature how to do something, you know, that we didn't know how to do before, you know, like the bumblebee's wings moving so quickly, or how DNA functions, or, you know, there's just so many things where we learn for how to make life better. So we're getting breakthroughs all the time when we study nature and how nature does things. So, so I had this thought, and after I finished my talk, I came down off the stage, and a group of people came up to talk to me, maybe a dozen people, and I'm kind of a big kid, and so I blurted out, "Hey, I wonder how the caterpillar butterfly does it. I bet we can learn from that." And one of the guys in the group was the first entomologist I'd ever met in my life, and he said, "Well, I don't know all the phases of it, but I do know that there are these things called imaginal cells that form inside the caterpillar's body after it's gone into chrysalis, and that they're completely different from the butterfly cells." And I went, wow, that's interesting. And I thought, well, I bet there's some interesting other parallels. So I started you know, it was interesting. For the next 3 years, I met quite a few entomologists. I had never met any, I mean, that's people who study insects. And after 3 years, I pieced together the process, and then right after I pieced together the process, I was giving a presentation on something called the best game on earth that I'd been developing, and you can look at it at bestgame.org. And I was giving a presentation on that, and I was, you know, using the talk about, you know, caterpillar and butterfly. And there was a woman who came to the presentation who was an expert in butterflies, and she said yes, that the process was pretty accurate the way I had described it. So about oh gosh, within a few months, I was visiting a friend down in Florida, and one morning I came out and she said, "You know that story you tell about how a caterpillar turns into a butterfly?" She said, "I think that would make a great children's book." And I went, "Oh, you're right, Gail, for children of all ages. I'll do it." Turned around, went back in the room, and I had a prayer that I did for writing that I had developed when I was writing my book about the bicycle trip. And it made writing so much easier, and it went like this: "God's wisdom writes this book through me. My intellect is illuminated. I write a book that blesses, inspires, and helps all beings in the infinite universe." And then I just feel gratitude. And it's like plugging into the global, the cosmic socket, you know. And Butterfly, the story, wrote itself over the next 45 minutes, and I almost didn't have to edit. Okay, and the whole way the book came into being, it was just a series of miracles, including the fact that when the way I funded it was helping to bring Xerox machines into the Soviet Union, because I was also doing citizen diplomacy in the former Soviet Union at the time. So this is the book. It's actually, that same day, I came out of the room after writing it, and I walked over to a picture, actually a piece of art on the wall, and I just stood there and I said to my friend Gail, "Well, she's written, but she wants to be illustrated." Gail looked up and said, "She's a local artist, you know." So I said, "Well, if she wants it, she's got the job." So we called her up and went over, and Charlene Madeline, the artist, looked at me and I looked at her, and we burst out laughing, gave each other a big hug, and then we just started, you know, planning the picture. She asked me what my images were that I had in my mind of the different elements of the story. And that's a much longer story, how the book came into being, but it's now been translated into Japanese, and with very different artwork done by a Japanese couple. And my dream, my vision is that someday it'll be translated into different languages and have the artwork done by artists from different countries. So here's some of the, let me just show the process. Can you see this okay? The process whereby a caterpillar turns into a butterfly is that first the caterpillar is very much like the industrial age of the age of consumption. Crawling around, eating and eating and eating, crawling up and down on plants, but not really doing anything, not really going anywhere, just eating and eating and eating and eating up its environment, kind of the way humanity's doing today. And then at some point eating just isn't enough, and the caterpillar goes into chrysalis. And inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar starts to break down, its body starts to break down. And then inside the dying body of the caterpillar, there start to appear these new imaginal cells. And they're much like, say, Christ or Joan of Arc initially, where they were killed off by the immune system of the caterpillar, this old way of thinking. And then over time, more and more of the imaginal cells appear. As I say, the early ones are killed off. And then more and more appear, and they start passing information from one to the others, the same way we're doing right now with this video, Megumi. And then more and more, then an amazing thing happens. These little tiny imaginal cells that are lonely individual cells begin to clump together into friendly little groups, and they're passing information from one to the other. And then the little groups begin to cluster together, and they begin to form a whole new pattern of interaction, sharing information in whole new ways with each other. And at some point there's a wave of good news that travels through the system, and as the book says, lurches and heaves, but not yet a butterfly. But then there comes a moment when all of a sudden, all of us little imaginal cells all over the world begin to realize we're something new, we're something different from the world around us, we're something wonderful. And then it's a moment where the butterfly is now born. It doesn't look like a butterfly yet. This book says, "Happy birthday, butterfly." It doesn't look like a butterfly, but there's now the butterfly thought, okay? And there's the vision, the dream of the butterfly. And in this one it goes, maybe, just maybe, the butterfly is dreaming dreams of someday flying out across the meadow, sipping from flowers, pollinating the fruit trees so they can bloom and bear fruit for birds and animals and people to eat. And at this point, an amazing thing happens. Each of these little tiny imaginal cells that all kind of look alike at this point begin to change. And each cell begins to do just that very thing it's most drawn to do. So each one is finding its own purpose, its own sense of what it's here to do, its destiny here on Earth. And then it begins to form the butterfly. And there's a phrase in the book that I love. It says, "There's something for everyone, and each cell begins to do just that very thing it's most drawn to do, and every other cell encourages it to do just that." A great way to organize a butterfly. So the best game on earth that you can read about at bestgame.org is a bunch of the ideas and sort of systems design that I've put together over the last 30 years for how to actually make that transformation happen. So anyway, that's, oh, and there's one thing to remember here, an important secret. That at the moment that the butterfly is starting to push out of the chrysalis and come out into the outside world, it's the most difficult moment because it has to break through that whole barrier collectively, all of us together. And it's super important that the butterfly do this with its own effort, because that's what makes it strong so it can fly. It pumps liquid through the wings of the butterfly so the butterfly can then fly. If you've ever helped a butterfly come out of the chrysalis, you'll know that it causes the butterfly to be deformed. So if you think you're having difficulties right now in your life, this is because we're all of us together breaking through to a whole new way of being. And that's, it's the greatest transformation humanity has ever known. It's the one that will set us in motion for at least 1,000 years, maybe 10,000 years, till the next great transformation and whatever that entails. And we're all doing this together. We're all waking up together. We're all realizing every one of us is equal to everyone else, and each one of us has our part to play in this incredible new world that we're creating. So anyway, that's the basic story of the caterpillar turning into a butterfly.
Where can people get your book?
Well, you know, I've just been talking with my partner Richard and some other people about putting it on the internet as something that could be downloaded. There are a small number of copies left that can be found on Amazon or some of the other secondhand book providers. And I do have a small number of copies in the United States that I sell when I go give talks. But this is a limited edition, so this is a collector's item now. And but hopefully we can get this out and into different languages and different artwork that can be just downloaded off the internet. That would be very nice. So if anyone out there feels, you know, like that's something they'd like to help with, we'd love it. Thank you.